Hello friend, this is Ryan Hicks of TaughtToProfit.com. Today I want to give you the case for and against Bitcoin. Now, I'm not against Bitcoin personally, but I want to discuss some things because too often in life, in business, and just basic living, failure comes in because you do not see what's going on around you. You get too married to something and you refuse to see the downsides it has and adjust for them. Bitcoin's one of those things, I think, for many people. Many people are getting into Bitcoin now because it's being hyped up. And a little background on myself, I've been in Bitcoin since 2014. I've been mining Bitcoin since then. I am invested in Bitcoin. I believe in Bitcoin. So I'm not anti-Bitcoin. But I see many people putting on blinders when it comes to the problems with actually using Bitcoin. For example, if you try to make a transaction now, it is no longer cheap and fast. You see some of these older videos, people are talking about how cheap and fast it is. It's not. Matter of fact, if you want a transaction to go through quickly, you may have to pay as much as 100% of what you're sending in fees. Gone are the days of sending $25 or $10 to someone. You'd pay more than that in fees easily, and it still may take an hour to get confirmed. And if you put lower fees on, it just may never get confirmed at all. So just because your wallet gives you the option of sending a transaction with lower fees, all that will happen, and I've seen this myself and tried it, it just doesn't go through. It never gets confirmed. You can't have a currency where your transactions don't go through, or where you have to pay 50% or 100% of the same amount that you're sending in fees. Just think if you were to go to the store and every $10 you spent at the store, you had to use another $10 in fees in order to make the transaction at all. No one would use that as a currency. And it would take you 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours for the transaction to even complete. No one would use that as a currency. And that is where Bitcoin is right now. I'm not talking about the future and plans, but right now that's where it is. Now, does that mean Bitcoin is bad and shouldn't be invested in? Absolutely not. Bitcoin is really, even though it started, and if you read Satoshi Nakamura's white paper, it began as a currency. That's what it was intended to be. But it is morphed from that. It is no longer usable as a currency today. That may change, and I'm going to give you some examples of why I think that will change, but for right now, that's where we are. Gold, for centuries, was used as a currency. It was eventually minted into coins, but that was a standard. Silver, gold were standards in currency. Today, you could still buy things with gold, but realistically, an actual real-world scenario would be you would have to take your gold to an exchange, get fiat currency or some other method to actually use to make your purchases somewhere else. You can't just go into a store with a gold bar and buy stuff. Most places will never take it. You might find some small mom or pop place that would take it, but the reality is that just doesn't work in the real world as a currency. But no one says, well, gold has no value because you can't use it as a currency. Just because it was used as a currency in the past and now it no longer is, doesn't make it have less value. It's just moved on to something different where now it's just mainly a store of value, but it's not what you use to do your daily transactions. And that is where Bitcoin is at this point. It is gold. It's electronic gold, as people call it, gold 2.0. That's where it is. It's a store of value. But for using it as a currency, it just doesn't work in the real world anymore. Now, on to some good things about Bitcoin. Obviously, the gold part is a good thing. It is a store of value. It has retained its value. People have talked about recently, oh, Bitcoin went down in value at the beginning of the year. Well, if you invested just a year ago, you are still up over 1,000%. Gold doesn't do that. Silver doesn't do that. Diamonds don't do that. Investing in businesses generally don't do that. You're at a huge upside with Bitcoin, even with some downturns here and there. It is a great store of value. In that sense, it is like gold. And there are things being worked on, such as a Lightning Network and other solutions to make Bitcoin back into the currency where the transactions are fast, they're inexpensive. Those things are being worked on right now to make it have that real world currency value again, where it can be used as a currency. Because I remember being able to send a few dollars here and there and it costs almost nothing. It was instantaneous. That doesn't happen anymore in Bitcoin. You just can't do that. But there are things being worked on right now and being implemented, and they might eventually roll out to full usage across the whole entire Bitcoin network, where you'll be able to actually transact and use it as a currency again. That may not happen. And if it doesn't happen, then Bitcoin is just what it is, which is right now, it is gold 2.0. It is a store of value. If you store gold, you don't actually take your gold out and go use it when you need to buy something. It is a store of value. It's holding value, but it is not something that you use for your daily transactions. I knew someone that was selling a house, and the gentleman that wanted to buy the house from them had gold, and he had to go and sell it to an exchange, and it was going to take 2 weeks before he got enough cash to then be able to buy the home. Because that gold has value, but the exchange process is going to take him a while. Obviously, there are gold exchange companies you could literally walk in the same day and get your cash, but for a larger amount, he had to go through a different scenario, and it was going to take longer. And that's kind of where Bitcoin is. Bitcoin doesn't take 2 weeks. If your transaction doesn't get confirmed within the same day, it probably will not get confirmed at all. But the fees are high. It does take a while sometimes. It's not instantaneous. It's not what we expect from a currency today. We expect to be able to go in, buy, and use it, and have the transaction completed right then and there, not have to wait, not have things fail, not have it not go through at all because we didn't pay enough in fees. And so if all these things don't work out and Bitcoin does not become a usable currency again, it still has tremendous value as gold, and it will still go up in value because right now it is still a small market. There's still few people in it. We're still at the beginning. I know people say, well, but there's billions and it seems like a lot, but when you look at Forex and there's 5 trillion a day over there, and you look at currency and wealth in general, there's hundreds of trillions of dollars, and then you look at cryptocurrency and it's under $1 trillion. These cryptocurrencies haven't even scratched the surface yet. This is all new. Even though it's been around for a while, there's barely anyone involved. You're starting to see more people get involved. You're starting to see banks get involved and hedge funds get involved in these things, but still barely anyone's involved. Bitcoin has the value also that it is pegged to all the other altcoins. So you go to most exchanges and the value is based on how many Satoshis. That's what that altcoin is based in. Its value is based in that, not the USD. And that is a huge value point because Bitcoin is the standard that these other altcoins are held to. It doesn't mean one of these altcoins couldn't overtake Bitcoin in market cap, but right now, Bitcoin is used as the example in what things are based on. They're measured in Satoshis. So I think actually the reality is that Bitcoin has a good future. These implementations that need to be made to actually have it be usable and scalable again, not have a bogged down network where transactions don't go through or they cost a fortune. I think all these things will be resolved and Bitcoin will continue to be the market leader and it will continue to be a store of value. But let's say none of that goes through. It just continues exactly as it is today. High transaction fees. It takes a while. Sometimes it never goes through if you don't pay enough in fees. I still think Bitcoin has great value as being viewed as digital gold. When you view it as a currency, you got to face the facts. It's terrible as a currency. No one would use Bitcoin as a currency today. In the past we did, but today, no, it's terrible. All those things make it completely useless as a currency. And I think those things will get fixed. But if it doesn't, you're going to have these other cryptocurrencies that are trying to be an actual currency will easily overtake it because they're so much easier to use. I'll give you an example. I was transferring some PIVX coin. I have a little bit of that. I transferred it, and I was expecting, I'm going to wait a little while. First thing, it cost almost nothing. And the transaction was instantaneous. Now, I don't know if it really was 1 second, but it was just real quick. No one would have had a problem with that transaction speed. And the cost was minimal to nothing. That's where cryptocurrencies need to be actually be used as a cryptocurrency. Now, as a store of value, they don't need to be that fast. And they don't need to be that cheap. Although I would like, obviously, it to be cheaper and to be faster. That's ideal. But I don't think Bitcoin has to have that in order to retain its value and even grow in value. So I don't want people to think that, well, because Bitcoin is not a currency anymore, it no longer has value. No, it's just morphed from what it was, very similar to the way gold did, where gold was used as a currency for millennia, and now it really isn't. You could still do some transactions, maybe with gold. You could obviously sell it and exchange it for currency and then use that, but it just isn't really used as a currency anymore. But no one, because of it not being used as a currency anymore, deemed gold as not having value. It still has tremendous value. It's still very desirable among investors. And Bitcoin is going to be the same way. Even if it never goes back to being usable as a currency, it will still have tremendous value because it has the brand name of Bitcoin, which is, most people don't know anything about cryptocurrency, but they know about Bitcoin. They've heard Bitcoin. And that may sound simplistic, but that has tremendous value in the actual market and the real world investing by people. And even banks, you see, what are they investing in? Bitcoin. They may be investing in some of the altcoins too, but big investments are going into Bitcoin. And the banks know all these fees, they know the slowness, all this stuff, and they're still investing in Bitcoin. So they see the value. Those are not people who want to waste their money, throw it away. There's real value in Bitcoin as digital gold. And if we look at it that way, then the flaws it has right now that may get resolved with Lightning Network and some of these other solutions people are proposing, that will just make it even better. But even those things don't work out, I think Bitcoin is here to stay, and it is a valuable, viable investment for you today and for years to come. I pray it's been a blessing for you. May God bless you richly.